SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network.
وتكلم من هناك لشوارزنيجر
Ya lo hace, pierna derecha, directo al arco, golazo, golazo, golazo.
This is Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio, your new live show about the beautiful game in all its glory, with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. MLS, EPL, La Liga, Champions League, all is fair game. Powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us at sportspodcastingnetwork.com.
Kevin, is the international break over yet?
No, not quite. There's about 48 hours left. And, talk about a break, and we imagine there's no game. There was a few games in MLS, but the international break, it's like a very mini depression for every club football fan in the world, that we're especially in our side of the world where we just started the season. Why take a break now?
It is the worst thing on earth. It is literally the worst thing that exists on this planet.
Never mind political aspect, never mind weather, never mind catastrophes. International break's the worst thing ever.
No, it really is. And I mean, I could go on for hours about this, but basically speaking, there's nothing to talk about unless, international football's fine. And most of us in North America probably got into the game by watching the international game. But by and large, when you watch it week in after week out.
Okay, let's face it. It's when you're Canadian that international football sucks. Okay, we'll be fair.
Well, Canada did get a couple of results in this international break. They did draw Scotland. That was something. We talked about that earlier. I think actually you would talk about that because I was AWOL for 2 days, but we'll ignore that.
Moving on.
Well, we did. I didn't talk about that, so let's just put that. I thought that was a decent performance, and Fraser Aird, he needs to play Scotland every day. That's my short story.
Hey, his first goal for Canada ever, and it had to happen in Edinburgh, and against Scotland. It's like a dream come true, probably, for him.
Well, and he was Canada's Messi that day too. That was where the hell did that come from? Well, we were actually talking about it at the time. It's Whitecaps fans must have been watching that game and shaking their head, but the reality is that Fraser Aird is not a fullback; he is a winger, and we saw why on the game on Wednesday. And Whitecaps fans just misused him, or sorry, not Whitecaps fans; they weren't doing anything with him. But Carl Robinson misused him all last year.
No, exactly. What's with Vancouver and Montreal where they can't use their big players when they go over and they have success? Well, let's face it. Venegas is not necessarily having success right now in Minnesota. I don't know how you quantify success there, but we'll get to it. Duane, there was a big game, though, Friday night. There was two big games. There was one in Azteca in the CONCACAF, Costa Rica visiting Mexico, and a good victory for all three. But the game that really caught our attention, the rare debut of Bruce Arena as head coach of the U.S. men's national team.
For sure. And it went pretty well for the U.S., which begs the question, what the hell was wrong with Klinsmann?
A lot, but I like to talk about, one,
I don't think we
two,
should talk about this.
and then after six goals. I'm like, wow, this is impressive. The way Clint Dempsey was coming back, and you had Pulisic doing I want to talk about sex so bad. Let's talk about sex. Six.
It must be nice to have nice things. I don't really know what that means as a Canadian, but nonetheless, 6-0 over Honduras. #FH. Daniel Squizzato finally got his FH to work there, Kevin. No, look, does that mean things are back on track for the U.S.? Because there is some stats out there that suggest that if the U.S. manages to lose tonight against Panama, that things aren't all that rosy. They still are about 50-50 to make the World Cup. But I don't know. Is it really 50-50 or is it something a little bit more than that? Because having watched that game, having seen Clint Dempsey return with that hat trick, I couldn't help but think that maybe they've turned it around, and that the problem might have been the manager, and that there might have been just a lot of discontent in that camp that has now been resolved. Kevin, what were your thoughts having watched that game?
Well, they have overcome the differential situation too, which might be important because of the amount of draw possible between the third, fourth, fifth position that will give you either a direct qualification, a play-in playoff game, and you're not making the World Cup. The differential could be important, and that's why the U.S. men's national team just didn't take the foot off the gas. They just went for it. Pulisic was having the ball. That little pass to Dempsey for the goal. It was beautiful to see. It's like a nothing play, boom, boom, and then you make something out of nothing, and that's a mark of a quality creative player. And Pulisic at 18, almost coming out of nowhere. Like if you go back to 2 years ago, he wasn't necessarily expected to be quote unquote the savior of the U.S. men's national team. And even before the game, people were like, "Nah, let's not hype it. Let's not put all the pressure on the kid's shoulder." Still, he has the performance of a lifetime for U.S. men's national team. 2 goals and 1 assist, I believe. Dempsey, 3 goals. You literally had everything clicking with still some injuries, a makeshift backline, and Tim Howard not necessarily at the best of his capabilities. He coming back from injury. He did play for Colorado this season so far, but not necessarily at the top of his game. He did have good games, good results, but he's not necessarily the best fitness form of his life. And now he had a good performance. It wasn't all out like blowout.
No, look, it was an amazing performance and something that was well needed. And you watch USMNT Twitter that night, and it was, sort of like night and day. It was like they took a weight off of their back. But you pull us, let's talk about him for a second there, and just this idea that if you're good enough, you're old enough, right? Like that's kind of where it's at. Is this kid potentially the greatest American player that's ever been produced? Like that's my question, having watched him now for a year or so, is whether or not we can already say that this guy is going to play at a level that is a level almost already that might make him the GOAT, right?
Well, it have to stay that way, right? This year it's his coming out party, we could say, in 2016, 2017, the Bundesliga season, the way he's playing for Dortmund in the Bundesliga and the Champions League, starting for Dortmund, creating a lot of chances and helping Aubameyang be one of the top scorers, and right now the top scorer in Germany. Yeah, I think you are right. If it continues this way, if this is just not like a perfect storm where you get the right type of teammates, the right type of environment, and you develop and you bloom and you become a world-class quality player, I think that's what we're seeing. It has to continue. It's the beginning of the journey. There's still a lot of effort, still a lot of games, a lot of soccer to play for Pulisic. I think that's what Lagaway meant when he said, and Bruce Arena, that's what they meant when they say he's not London Donovan yet. Well, that's why he can't stand next to London's accomplishment. But if you're looking at the track record so far of a Pulisic, he is at a higher level on all aspect of the game than his other players, or not his contemporaries, were at their same age. Like he's way ahead of the development of all the other American players that we've seen in the past. And if that continues, yeah, he has the shot of being the greatest soccer players the U.S. have created. But there's only a small percentage of the journey completed. There's a lot left.
No, for sure. And look, the one thing I'll say about this, if you want to look at, have a greatest of all time kind of conversation, he is a kid right now, and he's a kid that benefits from the fact that the previous generation came before that has laid the groundwork that allows someone like him to get into a club like Dortmund, where he is, and excel in a way that maybe a previous generation would not have had the opportunity to do. And that's because Americans aren't viewed the same way as they were 20 years ago, when, if you go back to the previous generation, when they would have been the same age, or 10 years ago even.
I hate to bring
right?
back that name, Duane, but Freddie Adu. Let's go back to Freddie Adu, because when I was a kid, it was a big story. Oh, Freddie Adu, a teenager signed for Major League Soccer player. This is normal across the world. And Major League Soccer at that point was not the level as the Bundesliga is. And you see the big difference there, where I see sustainability in the way Pulisic was developed and achieved success and reconnaissance. I see sustainability there because you're right. It kind of happened the right way, where like overnight success built under 20 years of work. Well, he's not 20 years old, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, look, you have to get the chance to have the success and go back to Adu. Yeah, he was big, on the cover of Sports Illustrated back when he was 14 years old. And perhaps that was too much. And I think there's no perhaps about it. It was too much at that point. It was hyperbole personified is what it was. But this kid is the real deal, but he's the real deal because he got the development, he got the opportunity when he was young. And you said it a minute ago, and this is bang on and something that still frustrates me. It's why the 24 list that MLS puts out every year makes me insane, because why the hell are you considering a 23-year-old a prospect? No, we've got to get that mentality out of our head in this part of the world. They're prospects. They should be playing when they're 18, 19.
Prospects are Alphonso Davies, are Christian Pulisic, are Jordan Moore. Well, Jordan Morris is actually way older than the next generation of prospects we will see in North American soccer, and the actual generation of prospects across the world. Raheem Sterling playing at 16, 17 for Liverpool. Harry Kane playing when he's Dele Alli, still like what? He's like 20? So there you go.
Yeah, no, exactly. There's nothing wrong with being excited by a 21-year-old that comes in and succeeds for your club. But the reality is when they come in at 21, let's talk about Raheem Edwards for a second here. We're going way off base, but Raheem Edwards is 21. He came in and debuted for TFC, got some good minutes, looked pretty good. Looks like he could be a contributor at the MLS level, but that's the reality of it. That he's 21. He's excelled and good for him. I'm not dismissing what he did. I'm not at all being dismissive of Raheem Edwards when I say this, but he's not going to be a world-class player like at the top level because he's 21 years old right now. And you can call him a quote-unquote prospect within the North American mindset because he is within the North American mindset. But the reality is these guys need to be playing and they need to be getting significant minutes when they're 17, 18 years old if they're going to hit the elite level. And we, for some reason, in this part of the world still don't think of that. And it's because I don't think we think of the sport as having true professional. There's no professional aspirations with our young kids. They want to go to college. They want to get a scholarship, whatever. And there's, again, nothing wrong with that. But if you want to be an elite player, you want to take the programs to the next level, you need to have these kids playing when they're kids, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you have to give them the opportunity and all that. So I kind of like that Pulisic played himself into the roster of U.S. men's national team. Like, they cannot not pick him when he's starting for his club at the Champions League level, right? So no matter what age, no matter what the scenario is, you have to put him on the team sheet because, well, he played himself at that level. He played himself into the conversation.
If you're good enough, you're old enough.
And he proved it too. So now he's proven commodity. So
yeah, absolutely. But anyway, to go off that topic, we'll go back to the actual result for a second. What are your thoughts heading into this Panama game for the U.S.? And I apologize to our Canadian listeners, but we have a lot of American listeners too, so we need to talk about both. Have they turned the corner, or was that just a bad performance, a bad display by what I think is a weak Honduras team? Yes, I know Canada didn't get past them, although they did beat them at home, which says it all right there. Canada beat this team too, so it's they're very good. Well, what are your thoughts heading into Panama, though? Has the U.S. turned the corner?
Well, they have to win in Panama. Then they will have turned the corner. Then we'll have 6 points, a positive differential, whatever the result is in Panama. Now it's 6 for them. So if you have a few goals in Panama, you don't concede, you go maybe to a +8, and you're starting to be one of the best differential in the Hex, which was the case before this international break. So then is the goal. A draw would be not a satisfactory result, but it won't be too dramatic. A loss could have dire consequences where it could mean to no World Cup for the U.S. A draw, it's the status quo. A win, they're back in almost contention, if not for sure qualify for the World Cup.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look, I said it last week. I said it on Wednesday that I did not anticipate that they would struggle, that I did anticipate, I should say, that they would succeed and that they would get to the World Cup still, even despite the fact that the results put them at the bottom after the first 2 games. But when you look at the schedule, you look at the results that they had, they played 2 of their hardest games so far. That said, I think this game upcoming is going to be tricky for anyone because I do have a lot of love for that Panama team, which I think might be in there for the fourth team in this hex situation right now. All right, Kevin, let's take a quick break. We're gonna come back. We'll wrap up with some MLS talk to end the show.
You are listening to Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
And we're back. And during that break, Kevin, a little known fact, Minnesota United gave up 3 goals.
Oh, man. Oh, Minnesota. When I saw them playing, I didn't watch the game live against New England this weekend. I just saw, I was on my social media, and they said, oh, New England just I saw 1 goal. And then I saw the Minnesota goal. So, all right, Colin Warner scored a goal from about 30 yards, a nice little 25. A nice little head by Colin Warner that bounced and curled and found its way back at the net. I'm like, all right, it must be close. Then I see the halftime post of New England say, it's halftime 4-1. I'm like, oh, dear. Oh, boy. Here we go again.
Yeah, I don't know whether they were joking or whether they just have a dark sense of humor, but the Minnesota United Twitter feed tweeted out at halftime, not the start we wanted, but we're a second half team.
Yeah. And people were like, no, you're actually not. You're as terrible in the second half as you were in the first. You're 8 goal conceded, 3 goals scored in the second half before the second half of that game. And, they alluded to it, Jeff Roeder, 55-1 on the show last week, Duane. Minnesota does not necessarily highlight the scores of their game post-game in the reports. So that people don't necessarily get the full effect of losing with that many goals scored against. But, it's terrible. And after week 3.5, Duane, I have to admit, you were right at the beginning of the season, at least at this point, where they're leaking more than goals, and 10 points actually seems maybe a possibility in 2017 for Minnesota.
Yeah, I did a poll on Twitter yesterday where I asked people how many points they thought Minnesota would end with, and 90% of the respondents responded that they would finish with less than 20 points. I had, under 10 was one of my options and under 20 was the next option. So it was under 10 and 11 to 20, so on and so forth, up to plus 30. Like I said, only 10% of people thought that they would get more than 20 points. That's saying something. Under 20 points in Major League Soccer is historically horrific.
It's worse than the Chicago Fire of the last few years. It's worse than Toronto FC for a long time. It's worse than the worst season that pretty much any team ever had in this league.
Yeah, the only team that is equatable to that we can think of is the 2013 DC United, the 13-point team. Are they that bad? And I think that they might be. In fact, I think they might be worse, which is why I give them an opportunity to perhaps finish below 10, which would be the worst season in history. In fact, I'll go a step further, Kevin. And I hate to say this, and I know it's early, and I know that we need to pump the brakes a little bit on this kind of conversation, but do we? They've allowed 5 goals in 3 of their first 4 games. That's insane.
They allowed 6 in 2, 5 in 1 in the other 4. And they had right? So it's crazy.
It doesn't even comprehend what they're doing, to put it in other sports equations. It'd be like a basketball team giving up 150 points 3 times in 4 games. It'd be like a hockey team giving up 10 goals. It's nuts what is happening. This team makes no sense. It's shameful, basically. There is no reason they should be doing this. This is quite likely the most incompetent management performance that we have ever seen in sports, not MLS, in sports. What they're doing, if this continues, and I think it will, it's not defendable, Kevin. I'm angry for them.
I know, but it makes people angry. And I talked about this a few weeks ago, but now it's going to get even worse. Will there be a pushback, a drawback, a fight of the supporters? Geez, come on, at least put up a fight. Or I know you guys are trying. It's not like a lack of effort. It's tactically, it's skill set level. It's, I don't want to say preparedness. Like the get ready for games. They had like moments that they had good moments during games, but over 90, almost like fitness wise, they just get marched all over them. They're getting trampled out there.
I mean, obviously, the one way you can defend them is to say that they've scored in each of their 4 games, and
True.
That's how you defend them. But what I would question about that is goals, because teams are opening way up because they just think that they can have a field day on them, and
yeah,
that's kind of what I think. I mean, you look
or
at
a mercy goal. The team's like, all right, fine, just go with it.
I mean,
the other team's like, okay, we'll give you 1 or 2.
Fair, yeah, no, like, well, we've all played it. Like, I don't know if we've played sports, we've probably played on both sides of that kind of equation where you're getting killed or when you've killed, right? And when you're on the side that's killing, you tend to loosen up defensively. Your intensity drops. There's no doubt about it, because you just know that you're going to score again, right? And I think that that's part of why they're scoring goals, is because teams just relax and they know they're going to be able to score multiple goals in a game. Again, 5 goals plus in 3 or 4 games. How many 5-goal games have there been in MLS history by a team? I wonder. And like,
it's probably
what
like in the
percentage?
10s or 20s, not necessarily more than that. So they allowed 5 in their first week, 6 in the second against Atlanta. Then they played Colorado, the draw 2-2, which brings us to this week, 5. So it's 5, 10, 16, 18's goal conceded in 4 games, for an average of 4.25 about per game. This is insane.
Yeah, well, Steven Sandor put a stat out that right now, if you do their goals per game average, it would actually make them last in the National Hockey League. Like, they are allowing more goals per game than the worst NHL team. Just comprehend that. Just sit back and think about that for a minute.
Like, they could probably be one of the worst teams in the world, statistically speaking, defensively, with the amount of goals conceded per game average.
I don't think there's any buts about it. Like
over 4 in soccer. You need to score 5 goals a game to give yourself to win a game, and then you might look at a draw more than not, because it's higher than 4 your average. This is mind-boggling. And I was trying to be nice at the beginning of the season, because I had my rose-colored glasses or my baby blue-colored glasses on, and I was expecting Minnesota to get a little bit of results, because you can't really anticipate a team to be that bad. They can't really be that bad, right? Well, they are.
They only dressed 17 players on the weekend. Think about that for a second. They did not have enough players to put on the bench.
I did not know that.
How the hell does that happen at a professional level?
This is unacceptable. This is unacceptable. Like, this is not a USL team, and I'm pretty sure that a few USL team will give Minnesota a run for their money.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the
US Open Cup.
Watch this.
Oh, I hope, like, I don't know, Louisville, Lou City, or St. Louis, or FC Cincinnati draw Minnesota in the US Open Cup. That would be awesome, because, hey, I won't even call it an upset at that point.
Yeah, no, like I said before, like, I like the people of Minnesota. I feel for them. I have anger for them. I have empathy for them, for sure. But at this point in time, I'm so pissed at what they've done there and how incompetent that they built this team, that I want them to keep losing like this, because I think that's the only way.
Benny Hill. We'll start the Minnesota bumper with Benny Hill music in the background.
Danny Cooperman's called TFC 2013 the worst team in the world, and it became kind of a meme here in Toronto. He was wrong. This is the worst team in the world.
And it's not even a meme at this point. It became a trope. Minnesota's that bad.
Like, I don't even think it's debatable. They would lose at a lower level. Like, and like the mistakes they made. Look, if we want to be intellectual about this and try and understand it and evaluate why it's happening, I think that they just didn't do any work. Like, they didn't do any scouting. They didn't put any sort of effort forward into finding and building this team. This is why, even though the NASL players aren't playing that they have on the roster, the fact that they're there at all is testament to the idea that they just didn't really do their work.
Well,
They
Duane,
didn't understand what
if you only
players were needed, what type of players were needed.
Exactly. And if you have like only 17 players dressed and you don't play the one from the NASL, you don't necessarily play everybody. And well, it's going to show. It's, for me, a situation where it's almost unacceptable. It is unacceptable. And you have Kevin Molino injured. He was stretchered off the game for Venezuela. He was fine later on. We'll see where that leads. And that leads me to, Laurent Simon is not going to play for Belgium tomorrow, Duane. He apparently was touched on the knee. So we'll see how important that injury is going to be for the Montreal Impact and other injuries as well. I forget on top of my head, but there was a few injuries of players playing international break for Major League Soccer. Laurent Simon and Kevin Molino for Minnesota, which that's not going to be helpful. If Molino's down for a few weeks, it's just going to continue to be the way it is, I think.
Yeah, well, yeah, if they've lost one of their, 4 or 5 MLS caliber players, then certainly that's going to be an issue. Okay, the last question on this is, how much does Heath have to play in this? How much of his performance is part of this problem, or is it any of it? Is it just a talent issue, or is this a tactics coaching issue? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, the tactics are dictated by the talent, no? Like, if you're an Adrian Heath and you come into a team and like, that's what you got, what do you do with it? Well, okay, we're gonna bunker down. We're gonna try to fight for that one opportunity where you're trying to do what you can. You can't do miracles with the roster you're given, so you adjust your tactics according to the roster you're given. So I have that idea. How influential is Adrian Heath towards the roster he had? Maybe he did not stress enough. Maybe they had plans to work and didn't fall through. They actually did fall through. That's the question right now. But as a coach, as a manager, you can only use the options that you're given. And you can only try to do the best you can with what you have. So if you're not necessarily convinced that your lineup is good enough, you're going to make him play in a way that's going to be the way you think is going to give them the best chance. So imagine they're probably playing in a way right now to give them the best chance for a result. So imagine if they were just trying to play soccer.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, this is where I struggle with it, is that in my mind, what you do if you're giving up 5 goals a game, again, insane. You have 2 against Colorado. That might be worse than giving up 5 against a normal team. Anyway, you just bunker down. You put 7 guys across the back, and you try and bulk in and hope you hit one on the break. But he might just not have the talent, which is ultimately where I came down on this roster when I looked at it. It was that they had a few pieces going forward, and I think that those pieces that they do have going forward are pretty decent, some of them. And that's why some people out there like Matt Doyle, the armchair analyst, why he continues to die on this hill that they're actually okay, is because he looks at these attacking talent players and goes, okay, well, they've got these guys, so they're going to be good. But when you look at the whole roster and you look at the balance of this roster, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, there's no rhyme or reason to what they're doing, and they just don't have the ability, in my mind, to even bunker down. They don't have the players to play a bunkered system, and that's nuts. They have to play going forward, and they're going to get lit. They might allow 10 goals in a game this year.
Yeah,
they might.
That's crazy. All right, let's end on a positive note, Duane. According to into Italian media, and from Zamali himself, he was talking to media after the game this last weekend, or a few days ago, and he was talking about how, well, it's probably going to be my goodbyes are going to probably come sooner rather than later. He mentioned it's probably going to be around the 8th of May. 8th of May. That's wait. The window of MLS transfer is still open up until this point. The international one's been closed since the end of January, but MLS one's still open. That's why you had players like last week. You had the what's his name? I forgot already. The big signing, the Schweinsteiger, who's going to come and join Chicago. That's why it cannot happen right now. The MLS transfer window is still open. It's going to close May and then open up in end of June. So maybe Blaren Zamali is coming to the Montreal Impact before the end of this transfer window, which means he will be playing for Montreal 1 month or month and a half, maybe more, or at least acclimatize a little early to give Montreal maybe that boost that they need offensively. They still had some decent performance, but the arrival of Blair Zamali maybe earlier than anticipated could be a very good positives, and maybe something that Major League Soccer club learned from the Lampard experience.
Yeah, no, certainly. I think back to Javenko, even how TFC managed to negotiate his early exit from Juventus. That was greatly
it's easy
beneficial.
when it's the same owner too. So, hey, Joey, yes, Joey, can we get your play earlier? Yes, no problem. Yay, talking to himself.
Do you think that the impact's somewhat slow start is contributing to this, or is this just the player wanting to get over here sooner?
I think it's a little bit of both. Like Zamali is having a good season, even with the international break last Thursday, playing for Switzerland in a victory. They almost had a goal, almost had a few chances, few looks on goal. And for a midfielder, that scoring wasn't his forte before. With Bologna, especially this season, he's the reason why they're not in relegation right now. They have been close earlier this season. They have been up high as 10th. Now they're dropping a little, but still, Zamali is the reason why Bologna is having success. And the potential arrival of Zamali earlier is probably a mix of him wanting to play not at a higher level on the pitch, but the coverage of Major League Soccer, the feel of bigger, the crowds. It's getting to a point where it's very similar to the Serie A and maybe a little higher on the media side than there. All right, so you kind of feel like you're playing under brighter lights, if you understand my analogy. And I feel he has that intention. You like playing the States, you'll go play New York, LA, so he wants that. So Montreal could be more appealing for his family and his wife probably than Bologna as well. So I think it's a mix of all those combination and the possibility of, you know what, if we want to do it, we can do it right now. We have the window still open. Why not?
What kind of strange world are we living in where Bologna is less of a bright light stage than Montreal? Canada, for God's sakes, might be. But
yeah,
here
well,
we
we're
are.
talking about a rural city, which is a city still, and with one of the big city in Canada, though. So,
Not on a social level. Yeah, I get that. I am very.
But a soccer level, yeah, okay,
The soccer level
But
is what I'm talking about here. Yes, clearly, I live in Toronto, where sometimes I like when you get snipped from some middle American. It's about how hicky you are, and you think to yourself that I'm living in one of the biggest urban centers in North America. But whatever, they're Oklahoma City, dude.
Exactly. Go back there. No, but that's what we sometimes forget to, a league. When we look at the league and we try to handicap it, where is it in the world? Is it top 4, top 5, top 6? Not just on the pitch is important. The perception of the league, the way the players see themselves in that league, how they are treated, how they're not worried to get paid, those type of things. It's not a worry when you come to Major League Soccer. It's a guarantee. You'll come in, you'll get paid, you'll be treated professionally. Majority of the situation in the league, yeah, you'll have to travel more, you have to take flights, and sometimes it'll be chartered than that. But the rest of it, especially like in Montreal, top class training facilities, they'll help you finding the right place to stay. It's all easy to commute. It's all close to each other. There is a lot of positive when you're looking at what attracts a player. And I can understand why now players earlier than before in their career see Major League Soccer as a great opportunity, not just to come and play, but to play, to enjoy life as a soccer player, to be better accommodations, to have a better quality of life as a professional athletes in their sports. And that makes for a better athlete, right? We've seen this in the last 20 years. How you treat your employees, how your employees feel makes a big difference from the outcome of performance you do get from them. It's the same for athletes.
Well, precisely. And it is, as I said, a strange world when that's the case, where Serie A can't offer the same things that Major League Soccer does. But Major League Soccer has advanced a long time in the last 20 years. It is both the most underrated and overrated league in the world at all times equally. That says something absolutely. Kevin, I've set up an interview for a little later today. I don't even think I've told you this, with someone who was at the San Francisco Delta's first ever game, that we're going to talk to him tonight.
Kyle Becker, forever remembered as the first goal scorer for the San Francisco Deltas, Canada's second national team, basically.
Exactly. So we're going to have that's on D2 Wednesdays. We're going to have that interview. We'll run then. I'll do that a little later tonight. I'll talk to Kevin after to see Whether he can be part of that interview or not, I don't actually know right now because I'm literally telling him live on the air. At that note, though, as always, Kevin, I'm going to let you say goodbye, and then we'll have a little chat about that before you actually say goodbye to me.
Until tomorrow, 10 a.m. Stay tuned to the Sports Podcast Network. A new episode of Scuderia F1 is dropping in the next few hours, talking about the Australian Grand Prix and the big win for Ferrari. Stay tuned all this week, 10 a.m. for your Soccer Today fix. You can follow Duane at 24th Minute and myself, Kevin Laramee, at Kev Laramee. And until tomorrow, have a great soccer. You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.